about refining your edges, making sure they're nice and smooth, you don't have any weird bumps, any sharp edges. You're also going to be perfecting the side view so you don't have really sharp corners. So if you go to handle your piece, you won't get cut by really sharp edges on your metal. So for filing, we have different types of files. We have really big files and teeny tiny ones. I suggest starting off with the larger files, and these are really good for the outside edges of your pieces. The big files come in 3 different varieties. We have a few that are just perfectly round, all the way around. So this is good for any tight curves that you have on the outside that kind of divot in. We have files that are flat on both sides. So those of you that have sharp edges that are really straight, these work really well. And then we have files that are flat on one side and then have an arch or a curve on the other side. So that's good for bigger curves that you may have. But also if you have any straight edges, you can still use the flat part. Okay. With the big files, these are good for getting a good chunk of the metal kind of filed off, scraped off. Okay, so I do suggest using these first. Okay. With the smaller files, these are perfect for your negative space just because they are teeny, teeny, tiny. Okay. With these we have a few more varieties. Some of them are the same as with the big files, so we have ones that are perfectly round all the way around, flat on both sides, flat on one side, curved on the other side. And then we have 2 that have kind of a triangular shape to them. One is more of a isosceles triangle, maybe, where it's the same on all sides, yes? Okay. The other one has more angled out edges. So depending on what your interior spaces are, your negative space, these can be really good to get into really tight corners. So when you go to file, you're still going to need your V-board and clamp. Okay? This is going to be your stability for filing. You should never, never, never file in the air. If you file in the air, you're not getting as much tension and pressure on the metal, so you'll end up kind of just scraping, 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 and not really doing much of anything. By having it on the V-board, you're able to really press down and get your edges filed off. Also with safety, especially with the smaller files, the smaller ones, a lot of them have these really sharp points on them. So if you're filing in the air and you miss, you might accidentally stab your finger or your hand. That wouldn't be pleasant. Okay, so please use the V-board and the clamp. Do not clamp your metal to the V-board. If you do that, you'll end up denting your metal, and those dents will now come off. Okay, so you're still going to be holding your metal like you were when you were sawing it out. Okay. So, a couple visuals for you guys. Okay. So filing, a top view. Okay, so this is just a few examples of the bad edges and then the good edges. So with your bad edges, that's kind of what your metal is like right now as you started sawing it out. So no one's going to be perfect at sawing their metal out in a perfectly straight, even line. So a lot of you will have these little bumps, divots throughout, whether it's in a curve or a straight line or kind of a curved archway inward. Okay, so with filing, your goal is to get rid of these bumps and smooth it out so you have one nice continuous line. So whether it's an arch, straight line, or kind of an S-curve shape, depending on what your design is. So when you go to file, this is where you're really going to be doing kind of a perpendicular motion to your metal. Okay, so you're going to be kind of filing in the same direction that you were sawing, just up, down, up, down, up, down. Okay. So with the piece I have right here, it has a little bit of a bumpy wave to it, but I want it to be one nice continuous arch. So I'm going to work with the bigger files, just to kind of start off with, so you get a chunk of it off, and file away. Okay. This is going to make a lot of noise, so just a heads up, it makes a lot of noise. So when I'm filing, the downward motion makes less of a noise than the upward motion. So once again, you're working with gravity, so the downward motion is going to give you a lot more of that power, more of the filing. So I really do suggest filing down, letting go, filing down, letting go, filing down, letting go. Okay, a little less noisy than, okay, so that downward motion is really going to give you your better filing power. Okay, so just the little bit of filing that I did right there started to even my edge out a little bit. Okay, so as you're filing, work in small areas at a time and take breaks. If you're just filing for 20 minutes at a time, your hands are going to cramp up. Okay, so take slight breaks. You know, feel the edge of the metal, run your finger across the top. If you feel a slight bump or wave, that means you still have more filing to do. And then you can go back. Okay. If you have edges where you have a really long continuous curve and you're just going kind of up, down, 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 down in one area, you're kind of concentrating on just one spot. So what I suggest to do if you have one really long continuous curve is to kind of hold the file at an angle, and as you're pulling down, you're kind of running it across a bigger length. Okay, so it's still perpendicular to your metal, but you're covering a little more ground. And that way, it's kind of filing a lot all in one go. So that will give you some really nice, continuous, smooth edges. Okay. Questions? So, as you guys are filing from kind of the top view to get your edges really nice and smooth, if you think you're done, ask someone to check it for you. If I'm not here, ask a friend. If I'm here, come see me. I will have a Sharpie and I'll put little markings on your metal of areas that you still need to work on, because craftsmanship is really important with this. The nicer and cleaner your edges are, the better your final product will be. Okay, so usually Sharpie up little areas, and they'll kind of give you an idea of where to really concentrate and work on. Once all of your edges look good from the top view, okay, it's including the outside and your inside edges, you're going to work on the side view. So the side view of your metal, it's squared off. Okay, it's flat on top, flat on the bottom, and then perpendicular on the side. It's like a box. Okay, so if you were to rub your metal on the top of your hand kind of back and forth, you're going to feel that it's not so pleasant. It's going to scratch you. It's sharp because you have that really sharp point at the top and the bottom. So to kind of fix that, you're going to round your edges so that that sharp corner at the top and the bottom starts to arch and you just have a really nice curve, almost like an oval shape at your edge. For this, you're really only going to do that on your outside spaces. Your negative space, you won't really be able to feel that sharp edge, so the rounding of edges is really for your outside areas. So to round your outside edges, you're still going to use the same files. I suggest using the bigger files first, and then after that, you'll have to use your smaller files. I'll kind of go into that in a little bit. But what you do is you're going to start by holding your file parallel to your metal. And as you're pulling the file down, you're going to bring it perpendicular. Okay, so it's horizontal to vertical, horizontal to vertical, horizontal to vertical. And what that does is it starts to shave off that sharp edge. Okay, so I'll do that on one side, turn my metal over, do it on the other side. And this you are still doing on the V-board, just so you have a lot more stability. And you'll start to see that your corner, your edge is going to round off and shave off. Okay. So I suggest doing a little bit on one side, flip it over, do a little bit on the other side, flip it over, and kind of go back and forth. You can also do the same thing as you did, as I showed you before, where you're kind of holding it at an angle, and as you're pulling down, you're kind of covering a little more ground. But you really want to be careful that you don't overdo it in one area. If you start to file too much, you might get a sharp point in the middle. So instead of having that nice rounded edge, you kind of shaved off too much on top, too much on the bottom, and you're left with this arrow shape. So if you get that arrow shape, you'll have to go back and file vertically to get rid of that point, and then you'll have to start again with rounding your edges. So just be conscious of how much you're rounding your edges. You don't want to do too much. So with the big files, you'll notice that it puts really sharp tooth textures into your metal. Okay? The big files just have a bigger texture to it, so it'll leave bigger teeth marks. So as you're rounding your edges with the big files, you'll be able to physically see those teeth marks in your edges. And when you run your finger across it, you'll feel it. It'll have this little bumpy texture to it. So what you'll have to do to kind of get rid of that is go in with the mini files and go over all your rounding. And with the mini files, you're not really shaving off a lot of excess metal. You pretty much already have it rounded, but the mini files are there to smooth out those larger teeth marks and make it smoother and less bumpy from that. So you'll do big files first, then the mini files, back and forth, so you no longer have those markings. Questions? Comments, concerns? Okay, that's all I got. Okay, so you're ready to start.